Right.
I'll start reading.
Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. False messengers incapable of preaching the worship of God alone. The devils can never reveal this. They neither would nor could, for they are prevented from hearing. Therefore, do not idolize beside God any other God, lest you incur the retribution. You shall preach to the people who are closest to you, and lower your wing for the believers who follow you. If they disobey you, then say, I disown what you do, and put your trust in the Almighty, most merciful, who sees you when when you meditate at night and your frequent prostrations. He is the hearer, the omniscient. Shall I inform you upon whom the devils descend? They descend upon every guilty fabricator. They pretend to listen, but most of them are liars. As for the poets, they are followed only by the strayers. Do you not see that their loyalty shifts according to the situation, and, and that they say what they do not do? Exempted are those who believe, lead a righteous life, commemorate God frequently, and stand up for their rights. Surely the transgressors will find out their ultimate what their ultimate destiny is. Praise God. I'll read the footnotes. 2620 to 26 210. A false messenger is a messenger of Satan, for he is the fabricator of the most horrendous lies. Such a messenger can never denounce idolatry or preach the worship of God alone. They neither. Sorry. Second footnote, 26 214 to 223. These verses refer to God's messenger of the covenant. The sum of the geometrical failure of Rashad Khalifa plus the verse number is 19 times 19 times 4. And the sum of the verse numbers 214 through 223 is 19 times 115. Details are in Appendix 1. Praise God. Um, I'm not sure where to begin. I guess 26:224. As for the poets, they are followed only by the strayers. Do you not see that their loyalty shifts according to the situation, and they say what they do not do? Um, I was discussing this yesterday with Mujahid. See, things like that makes me kind of uncomfortable describing the Quran as poetry, right? Like I know there's poetic patterns, right? And there's another verse that God says it's neither the utterance of a poet, rarely do they believe, or something like that. And I see sometimes people saying like, it's the best poetry and so on. But verses like that make me feel like God is specifically like distancing the Quran from things like that. And I was wondering, what do you guys think about that? Do you think it's appropriate to say something like that?
There's this concept where if something is catchy, it's more likely to be believed. And I think when God is distancing the Quran from poetry, because poetry by its very nature, it actually like a poetic prose or even a good rhetoric, it can make something false appear to be true, right? It distorts reality.
Mhm.
And I think that to me is kind of the call out because says, do you not see that their loyalty shifts according to the situation? And that they can make an argument for one thing and then immediately flip and make an argument in the opposite, and both of them sound so sweet, so spot on. That it shows there is no backbone, there is no foundation.
Right. I find that too. There's kind of like an intoxicant effect when you're presenting facts in a beautiful way. Like the beauty can kind of like cloud your judgment, right? Like I remember listening to some of these like apocrypha, right? And they kind of do like kind of take you somewhere else, like with the imagination and with like the words they use, and it's like some of the most blasphemous things you could imagine. Uh, so I kind of see that, yeah. So right, yeah. Personally, I try to not say that the Quran is like the best poetry or whatever. It just strikes me the wrong way. But yeah, these are just my comments for this. I don't know if there's anything else I can say. Oh, lower your wing for those who follow you. Where's this? Uh, yeah, 215, 26:215. And lower your wings for the believers who follow. Um, I wonder, this relates, I think, to other verses, right, where God is telling, I know this is about Rashad, but when God's talking to Muhammad saying, your supplication is like a support for them, or like, I don't know what the word was, but it was more like, it like encourages them, right? Is the word, I think. And I think this is kind of pointing to the kind of when the believers find that God is supporting them in any way, it's such a huge like morale boost, right? Uh, I'm just imagining if I was like around Muhammad or Rashad, like, and they kind of like encourage the believers, like how that would feel like. So I'm noticing that I'm kind of connecting with that other verse. Maybe I'll try to find it. But yeah, I don't know if you guys have anything on that. I'll in the meantime, let me just look for that verse. Uh, and back to you, Peter, for now.
I got a question regarding that verse. When it says, the one before, you shall preach to the people who are closest to you, and lower your wing for the believers who follow you. When it says closest, is that meant to be like proximity, or more in the sense of like relationship, like relatives and family and stuff? Do you guys understand that?
Hmm.
Peace be upon you. My understanding is probably people in relation, because they were the ones who had either family and relation bonding or tribal bonds, and given the relation, the message would have been more effective in them, perhaps, um, as opposed to people that weren't so close in relation or in family or related. They're not related. Um, they would probably be the first to receive the message and accept it. Um,
All right. Let me, if I can add also, this kind of goes to the concept that Peter you bring up a few times is the localism concept.
Mhm.
That do you think this is that?
Yeah, what's interesting is the word that's used, Asher, for kind of the closest. It's I mean, it literally means like your tribe. And then qabr, qarab, sorry, basically is also associated with like relatives. So it does seem to be, yeah, those within, either your community, but then also um, the ones within your relatives. It just makes me think, like, is there, God is the one who dictated who's going to be born in whose family, and where you're going to be residing and this and that. And if someone is a believer within a family, the likeliness of someone within their family also being a believer, you would think it should be higher. Obviously that's not always the case, but the fact that God placed that individual in that circumstance with those people, clearly there's something there. That's just a thought.
Peace.
Yeah. Oh,
Actually, oh, sorry. Just wanted to make a quick side comment. I think they do also have the same concept in Catholic social teaching. It's called subsidiarity. So obviously, the people the closest to an individual are the ones who were, best suited to help them, obviously. And I think if you believe in God and you understand that He controls everything, the more, it's logical consequence, right? If you follow the logic to the end, well, that means each of us have to. Uh, and actually, this was a comment that was made to me, I think, a few weeks ago about how we help people, etc., and who responsible for it. Yes, closest to us. Thank you.
With peace, what's funny is that Jesus himself actually refutes this concept of having to basically give everything that you have other than the excess to the poor and the needy. Shortly before his death, I believe it's Mary comes in and brings a very expensive oil and oils his hair. And one of the other disciples, I think it may have actually been Judas, and this may have actually been like what I think was one of the things that like made him go astray. Is Judas comes up, just assuming it, please correct me if I'm wrong, and points out like, well, what are you doing? You're wasting it. You could have sold that for money and you could have given all of that to the poor. And this is, basically this is not righteous. This is not good. And Jesus responds with, you know, I will not always be here. And she wanted to do something nice for me. And, this is, effectively this is going to be for, his passing, which is going to come shortly. And he says, the poor will always be there, but I will not always be among you. And so, like, the lesson is there's this grace for, like, it's okay to like do things other than just give everything to the poor or to like do these things like that, which is like the premise of the whole nearby art argument where it's like you have to give everything to like people across the world and all that kind of good stuff. And I just thought that'd be an interesting thing to point out. Peace.
Peace. Just want to again, quickly say something regarding this because I actually think that Jesus has never commanded anyone except his disciples to, give up everything and give to the poor and follow them, which is logical because uh, they are the assistants of a messenger. So God, Jesus is here saying, it'd be better if you strive with me rather than enjoy your riches in this world. I think so. So yeah, thank you.
I have a kind of an unrelated. It's related to the verses, but um, some of these verses were, only now we know that this is about Rashad, but I wonder how it was understood by even Muhammad himself. Like, what do you guys think he understood these verses as? Like, talking that, like, did he really understand that these were not about him directly, or are we assuming too much? Or
I don't think the
Uh,
concept of
okay.
just applying to both, because I don't read anything here unless there's a specific verse that we can say absolutely cannot apply to any of God's messengers. Is there something specific that you see? Because like even though that it's targeted towards Rashad,
yeah,
is there something specific?
yeah. I like. I mean, there's a few of these verses, right, where like before Rashad, you think, oh, this is talking about Muhammad, like the jinn, the jinn heard the Quran, and that chapter, I think chapter 72, right? Like, I wonder, like, if Rashad, you know, I get that it can apply to both, but for example, something like that jinn chapter, it seems to be a very specific event, or is it also one of those events that's like it was, it can apply to both, because like what would be Rashad here is pointing out that the geometrical value supports, the fact that this verse is directed to him, right? I don't think Muhammad knew that. So
One thing I would add
Yeah.
is, at the time of Muhammad, this concept that he was the final messenger, wasn't a thing either. When it declares him as the final prophet, they must realize, like, okay, this is the final scripture. But this concept that there wasn't going to be a messenger after him, later um, kind of doctrine that they came to. So,
Mm,
I don't think it'd be far fetched for him to contemplate that. Yeah, maybe some of these verses aren't applicable to him.
fair enough. Okay.
Peace be upon you. God bless you. My own understanding about the Quran, I think it goes with every generation from the time of Muhammad till this moment and until the day of judgment, because the Quran, speaks about the past, the present, and the future generations. So every generation from the time of Muhammad, the Quran deals, decisively with every situation of that moment, of that time. And this is why, when God told us it contains uh, the message of the past, the present, the future, you read the Quran, you find new things every day. Um, you make discoveries, it still enhances, our present time, and it tells us about the future, even some of the things that you do not think you will find it in the Quran, you find it, you see it there. When you go deep into reflection, into the study of the Quran, like God has told us in Surah 6, verse 38, God says in the Quran, we did not leave anything out of it. So the Quran goes with every generation, and there is no way at the time of Muhammad, what is true for them, that is what exactly will be seen and understood of God's revelations. And this is how I see it, and it will continue to go this way. So, thank you.
I wanted to comment regarding the first set of verses, 210 to 213, where it says, "The devils can never reveal this; they neither would nor could." This concept, and you hear this from like Christians that say, "Oh, how do you know that the Quran was written by the devil?" It's like the devil is incapable of delivering a message where the sole function is to reject him and to turn to God and remove all idol worship, to be a good person. That's not what his function is, right? His function is to lead people astray, to lead people to polytheism, to lead people to being, bad, corrupt. And to say that the devil is, nefarious, where he's going to deliver God's message, kind of negates the whole concept of what the function of the devil is. And this is also a similar argument that Jesus made when they were accusing him of um, casting out demons by Beelzebub, who's like the leader of the demons. I think this is Luke 11. I'm going to put the verses. It says, "Now he, Jesus, was casting out a demon that was dumb. When the demon had gone out, the dumb man spoke, and the people marveled. But some of them said, He casts out demons by Beelzebul, the prince of demons, while others, to test him, sought from him a sign from heaven. But he, knowing their thoughts, said to them, Every kingdom divided against itself is laid waste, and divided household falls. And if Satan also is divided against himself, how will the kingdom stand? For you say that I cast out demons by Beelzebul, and if I cast out demons by Beelzebul, by whom do your sons cast them out? Therefore they shall be your judges. But if by the finger of God that I cast out demons, then the kingdom of God has come upon you." So here he's not only attributing his ability to God, he's saying the devil isn't going to go and fight the devil. That doesn't make any sense. If this was Satan's nefarious plan to create this Quran, where the sole message is to reject the devil to turn solely to God. That goes against the entire premise of what Satan's function is.
This verses 2:10 to 13 further explains to us, the reason why um, the devil can never reveal this, because the way God has composed the Quran to deal with certain situations, the knowledge God says He revealed this Quran with His own knowledge. What does the devil know? What does even the angels know? God has to teach them or to enlighten them on what to do before they would even know it or before they would even, carry it out. So when God says He revealed this Quran with His own knowledge, that means what is contained in this Quran is heavy. So, and the devil doesn't know all the secrets in the Quran, and he couldn't pollute it. And this is why um, the Quran is even separated from Hadith, any junk. And this is why God has composed the Quran also with, this inbuilt mathematical code, to protect it from any pollution, from any adulteration. Imagine if the Hadith is contained in this Quran, like the Bible. The Gospel of Jesus is being polluted with, these letters of Paul and other people. Imagine if Bukhari, Tirmidhi, Muslims are all contained in the Quran. No, but God, out of His infinite, blessing, to remove those things out of the Quran, for His word must remain supreme, and the world would get the true message, because the Quran would continue to relate with the world until the day of judgment. So the devil definitely could not have the power to reveal or understand what is contained in the Quran. Praise be to God.
I wanted to make a small comment, and it reminds me of all of these like spiritual systems that like you'll find that some of them actually sound so nice, but there's always a compromise on monotheism somewhere. Uh, like even like you'll see like people say like, oh, yes, God exists. Yes, the God is the source of everything, but you know, He doesn't want anything from you. Like there's always a compromise. Um, so yeah, praise God. They can't. They wouldn't want. His main goal, Satan, is to keep that one thing from happening. So yeah, if you look for it, you'll see they're compromising usually on something very important. Yep, that's my comment. Thank you.
Anyone have any thoughts regarding, very serious matter, which is the idea of being a fabricator against God? So in 2:22, it says they descend upon every guilty fabricator. And then it talks about the poets and that they say what they do not do. I'm just curious, like, yeah, what do you guys think regarding this concept of, obviously it's serious, but when someone is speaking, falsehood and attributing it to God, is God calls them the worst creatures. But it's something that's so ubiquitous, like it's so you go to anyone of any faith, they're going to basically, tell you things that go, put God in a bad light or fabrications or lies. Like, yeah, it's I'd like to hear kind of, yeah, what other people think about that, because I have a tough time when I think about all the, how easy this is for people to have false beliefs about God, and the seriousness of the matter. Um, like how what's their responsibility? Let's put it that way, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't think they're doing it from necessarily nefarious motives. Go ahead, brother.
Peace. Peace be upon you, Peter. Peace, everyone. That's actually very interesting. And I personally do think it's more on the kind of the innovator part where, like we are right now, like to give an example of like technology, you'd have like an inventor and then you have a bunch of people using said invention. I think the biggest guilt is mainly on the inventor's part. And a good example of why this would be more, I guess, valid than kind of like saying all of them are in the same category is, well, Christians themselves, they believe in the Trinity, but like the people that are going to be condemned the most are those who fabricated it. But Christians now are, how do I say, they are kind of like labeled as pagans. The we are allowed to kind of like marry them, so there is this kind of grace, you can say. There is this sort of grace because the people who committed it, who knowingly read the scripture and whatever, either be it noble or not noble, because a bunch of, for example, a trope for Christian pastors is to lie to people to kind of guide them, and it's like there's also for like Sunnis as well, just like a small white lie to avoid the shubuhat, to avoid like creating cracks in people's beliefs, which sounds so innocent when you're like fully committed, but it's so harmful, like very very harmful. And I believe these people definitely garner the guilt, like 100%, because they are fabricators. But those who swallow the lie and don't realize it are more so in the victims. But they are kind of guilty as well of like, well, idol worship. And the scenario of them playing out to be like one of those verses where like the community would ask the leaders like, why did you misguide us? They say, you followed us. Where like the leaders are obviously going to take like the brunt of the blame, but also the followers will be with them. Uh, and from then on, it's like the question of, I guess, who's the lowest. But at that point, it's already done. Like you're already at hell. But yes, just to kind of like recap and organize what I said, I do believe it's just like those few initial people who fabricate the lies are those are like the worst creatures. Like for example, like in I'm blanking on the exact word. The Nicene Council when the Trinity was invented. What was that? Does someone want to? Oh, I'm assuming it was a mistake. For the Nicene Council, I believe these people are the fabricators. These are the worst creature. Same thing with the Sunnis, like the Hadith collectors, those who narrate things about the Prophet to further their political agenda. Like these people are the worst creatures, but those who follow them are guilty of idol worship, but not necessarily being a fabricator and the worst, and garner the label of the worst creatures. These are my 2 cents. What do you guys think?
Peace. I 100% agree with you because you see, these days, I like to go around, and I like to look around in the world what God has, put on the earth, and how it's analogous to other things in life. And I think that someone who starts a business and has a lot of, equity in the business is much more, someone with much more investment, much more ownership, has much more responsibility than someone who does not. So obviously, a fabricator will be, yeah, the Nicene Council, right? They're the ones who said that from now on, if you are to be an Orthodox Christian, you are to claim that Jesus is this and that God is this. They have this relationship, etc. That I'm not going to say, but yeah, these guys are definitely fabricators because before them, this product or this service, right, quote unquote, it wasn't out there, right? The Trinity, while it existed, maybe because some church fathers had some pagan beliefs that they disseminated, But these are the ones who put all the things together and created a church based on it. And these guys are much worse than a Christian today. He's 25 years old and he wants to be a pastor, and he's just here's you know he believes in the Trinity and he has to transmit it. But he himself, if he then becomes a pastor and teaches it to other people, he also takes part of the blame, and much more than just a regular believer in uh, in today's Christianity who just goes to church on Sundays, right? So it's each person has their share of guilt based on their involvement, obviously, and same for all. I think, for example, among the children of Israel, someone who disbelieved in Jesus but was just a young follower of the Pharisees is not the same as someone who said that Jesus expelled the demon by demons, right? One is literally one has much more knowledge and responsibility than the other. So, thank you.
I think we have the analogy of this, of different things in the Quran. Once an example is in Surah 24, with the story of the lie about one of the Prophet's wives, Aisha, when one who initiated a lie seems to bear a lot more responsibility, and is also reminding everybody else that you shouldn't have repeated it. But the initiator takes a lot more responsibility. The same happens with the story of Moses, where the Sumerian, were inspired to create something, some idolatry, a calf or cow with the sound and whatnot, and everybody else sort of chipped in and followed through. But it seems that when Quran addresses it, it gives a lot more weight to the initiator. It's just a reminder that for us, that we are people of knowledge to a certain extent of the scripture. We bear more responsibility, and we got to make sure what we say and what we utter and what we preach is in fact either the correct understanding, or we clarify it that this is our personal take or understanding, so we don't inadvertently misguide people by our mistakes.
Piece. Was wondering what people's kind of along the same lines. What is people's understanding of what is meant by the poets?
Sorry?
What like there's a poets. It says, as for the poets, they are followed only by the strayers. But I assume it means more than just people who compose and rhyme. You know what I mean? I just wondering what like I don't know that I have a good sense of text of what
You're talking about the poets?
Yeah, in verse 224.
Yeah. My understanding of the poets is when he says they shift their loyalty depending on the situation, it seems that one example that we have historical, backing for it is that the poets used to write poems in appreciation or glorification of certain individuals in the history, whether it be kings or people of power, and they would get paid for it. And then so their loyalty were depending who would pay them, or who would who were in a position of power, and this why their poems were highly affected by the situation that they were in. So God is sort of warning them and warning the people who read these poems that just make sure that you understand that they are serving, and they're not worshiping God. They are serving certain masters, and their loyalty shifts depending who pays the bill, or who pays them, or who buys their poem and whatnot. And so you got to be aware of it. And this is why this was mentioned in the Quran, because there was a lot of comparison made between the time of the Prophet. There were a lot of poems. A lot of people were in poetry and literature, and Quran came and there was this comparison were made, and God is separating the Quran from that, and also saying the Prophet's loyalty does not shift, on the situation. His loyalty is to God and the message that he is preaching, and is not. If someone comes as Prophet, I pay you. How about you give us some verses that approves our idolatry, what are ways in the Mecca, and he would not do that because it's saying this is not the same as you guys are accustomed to, perhaps, where the poets used to get paid or used to get being bought in different situation, depending who values their poem and whatnot, and they will write to satisfy certain individuals.
To add to that, the term that's used in the Arabic for a poet's sha'ar, it also comes from the same root as perception. And you also see it used in the context of like symbols or rites. But the way I see it is these are propagandists. Today, I would put these in the camp of individuals in the media. They make most disgusting acts seem honorable and courageous, and they change the perception of the masses. That through their rhetoric, their campaign, their symbolism, they're able to make something horrendous seem noble and righteous. And there's a passage in I want to say it's in Isaiah, but it's like most cursed is the one who makes something sweet bitter and bitter sweet. And that's what these propagandists do. Uh, Depending on, yeah, as Amin mentioned, whoever's paying their bill, they'll make the most sweet propaganda, meme, whatever, to promote that side of the argument. And it shows that they have no integrity towards the truth. It's strictly for them. It's basically about perception rather than actual reality.
And they
Peace.
also
Just go ahead.
sorry. No, sorry. All I want to say is they also do serve the politicians who are the kings of today. So I want to say thank
Yeah, peace. Yeah, I just wanted to add on to what's been said. 6:112 kind of reminds me of what these poets are. Right, as God says, He's permitted the enemies of every prophet, human and jinn devils, to inspire in each other fancy words in order to deceive. As Peter alluded to, right, like the subjective view or the tailor-made perspective of one's reality is what we often see. This false virtue being pursued to make yourself more virtuous or more righteous. It's kind of like a story as old as time, and we see this all the time, right? Like the whole LGBTQ movement is on the back hold of, oh, love is love. We got to treat everybody equally. All this fun stuff, right? They use fundamental truths to drive their innovations as part of it, right? They make it a canon, and that's what I see as poets, right? People who fabricate reality to suit their own agenda and desires that hide themselves from the reality of things. Peace be upon you all.
I think, thank you all for sharing your perspectives on that. I think it's interesting, like with the title of the surah and and the reference to the poets and how throughout the surah, like God is giving us examples of different messengers, prophets who went to a community and did shift their, some of the people's perspectives there and kind of showing. I think having that repetition of the different messengers gives us example of, okay, this is how it should be done when it's being driven by God, not by those other motivations. So I think it's giving me like a different understanding of history.
To piggyback off what Justin said, there's this concept, it's called paltering, where you're using truthful statements to justify a lie. So, it's a subtle way of deception where you get someone to say yes, oh, is this true? Yes. Is this true? Is it yes? And then your final conclusion is something that's just inaccurate. And there's this um, a quote. It's from Groucho Marx. Let me see if I can pull it up. Is the case of every politician is to identify everything that's wrong and then give the like, so they're pointing out all the faults, but then their conclusion is just terrible. Let's see if I can pull the quote. And I see, this is something that society at large, when you get people to believe in lies, that's why it's so heinous. It kind of reminds me of God's decree towards those who charge usury. That he says, expect a war from God and his messenger. And that if people can't be able to have sources of, okay, this is true, this is false, and it all gets um, melted together, and it just leads the masses to the wrong conclusions. That's really destructive on a societal level. Like, it's one thing for someone to do, like, let's say, I drink alcohol and I cause harm to my own health, my own, like, life. That's not as bad as me, polluting the masses and convincing them, to believe in a lie, and thinking that it's righteous. Here's the quote. It says, politics is the art of looking for trouble, finding it everywhere, diagnosing it incorrectly, and applying the wrong remedies. Right? Because a lot of times, like, the politicians, they'll point out the actual problems. Sometimes they're just straight up lying, but then there's quote unquote solutions to those are destructive to the society at large. And yeah, they have a lot more responsibility because they know better. They know what they're doing.
Just to go into the symptom, I found that, like, these fancy lies, these poetic things, they require a lot of bolstering around the lie. Because if you say the lie outright, it's so preposterous, people just denied it immediately. I gave this example to my children, actually, because, like, to show how easy it is to believe in a lie, right? Like, you point to the grass that's green and you say that grass is green. Well, I can change that to an alternative by just bolstering truth around a lie. Okay, is it not true that white light is, comprised of all colors? Yes. Okay, and different objects that light touches refracts different colors. Yes. Okay, so therefore, the grass is more pink than green because all you see is a reflection of it, right? No, it's objectively true. Like, the grass is green. That's how we perceive it. That's rooted in reality. But if you bolster a bunch of truths around a lie, it makes it more believable. Kind of just piggybacking on what Peter's saying.
I think, when it comes to politics and stuff, you see they have their media heads, spinning stories. They literally call them spinners, right? How do you spin a story to make it favorable towards whatever it is that you want, and look bad upon your enemies? Um, and it's easy for us to look at that and say, okay, that's wrong. The people are going to be held responsible. But I got a question for everyone. In religion, there's apologetics and then there's polemics. So polemics is when you're poking holes in the other side's argument, but apologetics is when you're defending a position. And the question is, at what point do we deviate from defending a position to propagating something that we know is not true in order to save face? I think that's as at least for our own souls, unless anyone here is part of the political establishment, I do see this concept of bad apologetics, something that creeps into religions. And the question I have is, how do we safeguard against that? We don't fall into the same traps, because if I look, Christians, the Jews, the Muslims, all of them, they do bad apologetics where they flat out lie, but they feel like it's a noble lie because it saves face, and I forgot who mentioned it earlier. Um, they don't want to have any quote unquote cause any doubt in the religion, so they say, hey, it's a good lie. And you'll actually find hadith where it says that you're permissible to lie if it's going to unite believers. And you could see how anyone can make that into a justification. I'm just curious, yeah, from your guys' standpoint, how do we safeguard against that without, how do you put it, turning on our own, but at the same time being honest with, if someone poses something, like how do we maintain integrity while still, partaking in apologetics?
Peace. My answer personally is very simple. I think sometimes I do see Christians posting some videos uh about mostly Trinitarians, obviously, uh and they do lie. And my solution to that is Jesus' solution. He even said, right, and this is an argument I use when they say Jesus is God. I say no, because Jesus himself said that he's only here to do the will of the Father and to say exactly what the Father wants him to say. No more, no less. And I think it's the same for us. I see some submitters who do apologetics, and I see them repeating what the messenger said and not deviating too much from that. And I think this is smart. I think anyone who cares for their soul should do that. Of course, there are the people who might have other skills that they may use, lawfully, but I think it's best to just stick to something you can clearly verify and never deviate from that. Even the Quran says, 1736, you shall not accept anything unless you verify it for yourself, right? So you have the hearing, the eyesight, and the mind. That means you can use your reason or you can use your senses, but you have to be able to demonstrate that what you say is true and verified by the revelations of God. And I think that's the smartest thing to do for me and for anyone else. I say we must say what we're commanded to say, no more, no less, because this is eternal life and this is our soul that's on the line. Thank you.
Peace be upon you. I think a common symptom of this cognitive dissonance is just inert tribalism, right? Like an us versus them situation, where a person self-actualizes their, what would you say? They are now an agent of that tribe, right? Like they are a representative of that tribe. So anything that they lose in an argument is a loss against the community, right? So they're willing to lie for a win of that community. And I think it's important as submitters to not align with the community against the truth. Like our priority of what we align to as authority isn't community. We have found a community by God's leave under the truth, and it's the truth that we have to be held accountable to, at a fault, regardless of what happens. Rashad gives a good example, and we've used this argument before for other circumstances. But like, if like a Sunni imam tells you the truth, at that point in time, you are compelled to understand it and recognize it as the truth and follow it, right? Regardless of who the individual is, if the truth is spoken, we have to adhere to it. And I think if we put that at the standpoint as the priority, we become, well, it's a preventative measure, right? I'm not going to say that nobody can fail, but I think it's a preventative measure. I don't know what you guys think.
Peace be upon you all. I think it's a little bit more challenges because I've over the years I've seen submitters, especially submitters, looking at the same information, then coming up with different ideas, the same audios, the same verses, and this is very interesting to me. And it also it's I want to highlight that sometimes we don't understand the gravity of this when we are talking about God and His revelations. As the brother said, we have to be absolutely sure we don't say about God except the truth. I have heard certain statements that this is my understanding. Not that's fine. This is my understanding. But when they make a comment, they say, "Okay, this is what I see. If I'm wrong, may God forgive me." I think we have to be more more careful in that matter, especially if we are not sure to keep more time to study and so on. And the recent example I had is two of my dear brother, both of them, I love them so much. When it's come, let's say one example I told you was the Millah of Ibrahim. One brother says, I look at Rashad's material and the Quranic verses, we have multiple Millahs. The other brother disagrees. He see the same verses, the same, the references, and he came up, he said, no, the only Millah I see is the Millah of Ibrahim. So this was the latest example. So what I'm saying is that we have to be super careful. We have to pray to God. My Lord, please increase my knowledge, keep time, study, and make sure we don't say about God except the truth. God willing.
Peace. I can echo that. You see the increase in apologetics happen the more and more there's interpretation and adherence to a strict orthodoxy. It's a problem since the beginning of time. People think that if I say, okay, like, if you go to the example of the Pharisees and like in Judaism, they say, okay, well, work is forbidden on the Sabbath. And then they say, okay, well, what defines work? And the classic example is like, okay, well, if you walk more than 2/3 of a mile, then that's work. So therefore, walking a mile on the Sabbath is forbidden, is prohibited because it's work. And so the justification is these are clarifications, that these, clearly we're trying to uphold the law as much as we possibly can. And so what you end up happening is with, like in this case, like, Jews are basically, all they can do is like sit in a dark room on the Sabbath, something like this, right? It's like you can't, like if you turn the dial on the stove, you are breaking the Sabbath. And I'm not over exaggerating. That's the extremity of it. And so this is actually something that prophet and messenger again and again and again, pretty much every single one of them has spent all of their careers fighting against, whether it was Rashad, whether it was Jesus, anyone who basically didn't bring down a law, which was Moses and Muhammad, was spent their entirety fighting against this orthodoxy. Because what happens is you create new commandments that God never commanded, and it's just like in 2 seconds it happens. So whenever you put this interpretive lens, I mean, like God has laid out every single prohibition in chapter 6. And he gives the mercy of a few elaborations throughout the Quran based on that. But if 6149 through 6153, all the commandments are there. Everything is there. And God says it explicitly. Everything is there. So the thing that you need to turn to is a better orthopraxy. Praxy is rather than saying, okay, if I have the right belief, which is an orthodoxy, then I'll be saved. It's, do I have the right actions and the right behaviors? And this is something that you saw Khalifa touch on. Jesus spends his whole ministry talking about this. So it's like when you are forced to defend a bunch of made-up commandments, such as you can't walk more than 2/3 of a mile on the Sabbath, otherwise it's work, then you have to create an intricate web of apologetics that makes everything extremely complicated. And you avoid all of that by simply referring back to the spirit of the law. We're leaning on God's forgiveness and mercy and saying, okay, well, let me stick to what I know is true and focus my attention on my own actions and behaviors rather than the judgment of what others are doing based on, I think that my definition of work is walking a mile in a day. Therefore, that person is a sinner because they walked a mile on the Sabbath. which is, what most of these made up commandments end up, forcing us to do, is to say you're a sinner because you walked a mile on the Sabbath. And it sounds ridiculous, but that's what every man-made commandment does. Peace.
This is an interesting topic, actually. So, this is where it comes where you don't have a description of something. When you don't have, God says the commandments are clear to follow. What happens after the questions comes, and the questions usually attack the parts that, may not be directly, extrapolated from the commandments. We have the example in the submission in Islam as well. We have the example of, what happens if you go to the North Pole when you pray, all that stuff. And then people will start, coming up with what their understanding is as the way it should be, or as the way they would carry it out. And then it goes on to some sort of debate and discussion, and then something comes out of it as, a fatwa or some sort of ruling. And this happens also frequently, and this is in fact a business in most Islamic countries, Iran, Middle East, as their people, or their job is to extrapolate rulings based on their understandings of Quran, and obviously they have extra sources like Hadith and Sunnah and other sayings of the Imams and the Prophet and whatnot, that they claim that this clarifies this matter. So, and I think this can also be done, and you don't need to necessarily an extra source. You can also come with some sort of extrapolation of understanding based on Quran about various matters that are not clearly defined in the Quran. And submitter groups get together and discuss these matters, and extensively sometimes, trying to come up with some sort of cohesive understanding, which is okay to discuss. I think that's a good, healthy way of thinking about things, is to have an open discussion. But what sometimes gets happen is that coming to some sort of understanding gives some sort of an approval, assumes that this is some approval from God, that this must be the right one. And so now we get to go around and remind people that this is the right one, and if you don't agree with this one, then you're either bad, or you're not welcome, you're this and that, and other things happen. Mind you, they may all come down to a wrong one, and they're now doing two things. They're ostracizing other people, and then through that action they're also promoting falsehoods. So there's two things can happen at the same time. So this is one of the things that we are facing as a society of submitters: how to address, how to talk, how to behave. And I think this is the core of the matter. And the example you provided with the Judaism and Sabbath is an example that happens. It can happen within submission, and we can pick many topics, and we can sit around and talk about it hours. I think this is important that we pay attention, that this is a loophole that a lot of people fall into, a lot of religion fell into, and so how we can constructively be aware of it for ourselves, for our own souls, not to fall into these traps. And at the same time, you had to address this, not to be individuals who try to dodge questions and dodge topics. So it must be a balance that we could strike in here.
MashaAllah, brother, well said. I'm saying the borderline. Where is the borderline? This is very important, because as far as I understand, when Rashad is speaking and attributing anything to God, we have no choice but to hear and obey. Any religious teachings or God, attributed to God. But there are, of course, we have a lot of articles from different years, perspectives, and so on. So this is where I think each submitter has to, use their own, mind to differentiate that the information that is attributed to God, such as the jinn companion, the clear explanation of insurance, and so on, example. And the other aspects, let's say I feel that there will be an asteroid that will hit 1990. So there's a borderline. This is what we have to keep in mind when we are studying the material, going through the audios, videos, which I see them very valuable sources of information that expand our understanding on the verses of the Quran. At the same time, we have to be established that balance, not to take literally. This is what happened to the Sunnis, right? Like the Prophet liked to eat chicken or whatever. So we want to be, God willing, mindful of that when we are studying the materials of Russia and looking in the light of the Quran.
I got a question in the same vein. So okay, obviously we don't want to be to a point where we're fabricating statements to save face. But let me put it this way. So we have the example in chapter 38 where the two brothers they go to David to get his judgment. And one of them, the expression is that he overpowers me in speech, meaning like one of the brothers, the one with 99 sheep, just a better arguer, a better debater, a better talker. But he realized like what he's saying, didn't correspond with what he believed to be true. So let's say, you have someone who's new to submission, okay? And they're getting confronted by someone who's just more knowledgeable than they are, and they're bringing up really good points that they don't have a refutation for. How do we go about that aspect of saying like, okay, as believers, we have to love the truth, but at the same time, you don't concede, like, how do you not concede on points that, let's say, if you don't have an answer for? How do we make that determination between, hey, this person is just being stubborn versus no, for whatever reason, it's like we don't just go with whoever has quote unquote the better argument. And how do we balance those two? Because someone can just make a better argument, but doesn't mean that they're correct. Um, but at the same time, yeah, without getting into this concept of like, oh, let me just uh, deny kind of what they're bringing up because it's inconvenient. How do we balance those two?
Peace. Um, for me again, it's 1736. I remember when I came to submission a year ago, I had a submitter who, quote unquote, and this is what he says, right? Um, who who had good arguments sometimes, or at least arguments I could not refute because of my lack of knowledge. And so my answer would just be if you're facing someone who overpowers you in speech, right? And take it from someone who has learned their lesson, it's ask for evidence. If the person cannot bring you explicit evidence for what they're saying, God is commanding you to not accept it. It's very simple, right? You shall not accept anything unless you verify it for yourself. So you have to verify it with your eyes, ears, and your reasoning skills. And if you can verify it, then you're commanded to obey it, of course. But if you cannot, then you tell the other person, I'm sorry, but as a submitter, the Quran, right, commands me to not accept anything you say unless you bring me sufficient evidence. So yeah, don't be stubborn, obviously, especially since God says, if they said that if God sent another messenger, they'd be better guided than certain congregation. So obviously, we shouldn't be like people who say they don't believe in Rashad and invent excuses for it. But we are not to accept anything unless we have explicit evidence for it. Otherwise, we are the transgressors and we would be responsible for that. And no one wants to be on the day of judgment uh, on the side of those who have innovated and who will just say, oh, I followed you, it is your fault. That's really not a situation no one wants to be in.
I think that Kidder made a comment in the comments like being intellectual honesty and saying I don't know. Ironically, people, there's an ego about saying, oh, I don't know. They it implies that they're dumb, but actually, it takes a great deal of wisdom and intelligence to be able to go in the moment, well, I don't have the answer to that question. I remember at one point someone was grilling me about, how do you basically guarantee the purity of an orthodoxy in a religion if you don't have a centralized like inheritor, like the person was fundamentally thinking from a Shia point of view, right? Like if you don't have like someone that just is always there to clarify and to unify everyone's thoughts strictly. And I said, well, I don't know how you accomplish that other than to trust that each individual is going to come to, the answer that God guides them to. And, sometimes you don't always have to have an answer. And that's like really hard to admitting. I mean, God knows, like, it's never easy to, especially if you get caught up in the heat of a moment of back and forth. It's very easy to cross the line from, I'm speaking the truth and sharing something in the best possible manner to now I'm switching modes into I'm trying to win an argument. And we see consistent examples of the Quran cautioning against like basically every, the human being is the most argumentative creature, back and forth, right? And the minute, what's funny is that so when the Quran is complete and fully detailed, there is a side effect you don't realize behind that when you open the Quran and you look into it, you will find the answer to justify any position that you want to justify. So when you open the book and you're looking at it with the intent to win an argument, you have kind of put on blinders, and now you're like tunnel visioning your perspective, and the danger with that is that begins to narrow the field of view on the whole Quran. And this is how we end up with some very peculiar takes. And you just see that's usually at the source of everything. And so one thing I think that's a very useful exercise is to always look at, and especially with the gift of digital like text and all that kind of good stuff, one thing I like to do is put my messages through AI and try to identify the ways in which I have been hypocritical without me realizing it, to try to reflect on those things and say, okay, well, how can I basically get out of my own way in order to remove all of the internal hypocrisies between my thoughts, actions, and beliefs? Because we all have them and we all fall into them. And it's like the exercise, God has given us a very clear path to say what happens between all these paths. And rather than running away from that, face it for yourself and say, okay, where am I, rather than pointing the finger at somebody else, looking at yourself and saying, where am I falling short here? And how can I, come at this in a better way? Peace.
Peace, brother. I wish everyone had this understanding to look inward and trying to find out how they can make it better, have patience, pray to God to increase their knowledge. But unfortunately, usually what I've experienced over the years, it goes beyond that. It goes beyond the winning argument to the point that basically you have witnessed it yourself, calling names and divisions. If everyone, as you mentioned, that they examine themselves, if they have some understanding, if they're not sure, they can say it's my understanding. Or sometime, at the meantime, they can say, okay, we agree to disagree on this particular subject. Let's keep more time to study. Let's pray to God to increase our knowledge. Maybe I'm wrong, some there. Maybe I can keep more time, but this is not being happening. Like you said, it goes beyond. It starts with the winning argument, and it continues, and someone will be called out. And unfortunately, the result is, as you have part of it, you have witnessed. So this is so important to be. It's to the point that there are certain submitters not showing up. I'm in touch with them. That is also another. I don't agree. Just a fear of dispute. There are a few submitters. I'm saying, hey, we have a grand Quran study. Please join us. This server, you can. They're ready to listen. Nobody gonna attack you. There'll be no so on. Anyway, that's another story. But they have over the years so much. They have witnessed this stuff, the name callings and so on. So they pulled back. That is also I disagree. To distance yourself. But this is what's happening. Ultimately, I think each submitter, it would be great to, it is a good idea to always keep time, study, and pray to God to show them the best path. God willing.
Assalamu alaikum. I really like that idea of saying, this is my understanding. Because, even God shows us in the Quran, there are two prophets. There's Solomon and David, and they have to make a judgment. And God tells us that he only grants the correct understanding to one of the two. And these are his prophets. So then that tells us, well, maybe the point is not to be right all the time. So when we stand in front of God, after this is, after our test is done, is he going to be judging us on being right more often than other people? That's not what we're supposed to be trying to attain. We're trying to race towards righteousness. There's a verse in the Quran that says race towards righteousness. So that's supposed to be our race, is trying to be more righteous. And being correct all the time is just getting our, it's racing towards, stroking our ego, I guess. So, and in the Quran, it does say is, Aleen and Sajin. So you can get steered in the wrong direction if you're not trying to be righteous and you're trying to be correct all the time. So that's not what we're trying to do, is be correct on everything. We're trying to be righteous. Thank you.
Peace. God bless you for this reminder. Actually, something that I personally have had a lot of problems with that, because ego is, I think it's all of us, but me in particular, it has always been my biggest problem. And I don't know how to admit that I'm wrong. And I remember a couple of months ago, I used to get into arguments, and I'm not very well all the time. God help me. I used to insist very much, and it used to even be. I realized how childish that is. One, besides the fact that that's dangerous, right? I think I grew. I'm too old for that now. Also a thing. Yeah. So thank you.
Peace be upon you guys. Yeah, I actually wanted to say something. Um, the whole concept of striving, the way that I see it is that like you're kind of doing a good deed, but it puts you at such a position where you're sitting, like you're basically at a higher risk of committing sins, right? You can get irritated quite easily. Um you might start objecting, right? To like uh, basically God's wisdom. When you see someone who's like not accepting the message, or like he's just using like a technique in debating that you don't like, and that might like really just uh, make you irritated, right? The whole test is that like whenever you're putting yourself out there trying to debate other people, um, you're uh, more likely to commit sins, because like now you're trying to represent something that requires like a certain level of knowledge, right? Um, but the whole point of like basically all of that is that you don't want your ego to make you like commit those sins. Uh, people might not always think about this, but you don't have to win any debate. You don't have to win any debate on any platform. You don't have to convince that guy. You have every single right to just like leave the voice chat, or like disengage from any kind of discussion. If you feel like you're about to sin, or you're just like not debating in the best possible manner, right? And um, uh, proceeding in that debate when you don't have these standards is actually bad for your soul. It's like this concept of like a pyrrhic victory, right? Like it's like a false sense of victory where you're basically uh the whole point of your debate is to like quote unquote defeat the other party, or like uh make them like silent, or like you give such an argument where you know for a fact you might have um, mixed with falsehood, or you basically made like an empty claim. Uh, these things might like really backfire on you, and start just giving you a pattern of like just subtly lying and lying. And again, like you always have to take an account that you're putting your soul on the line whenever you're trying to basically make those apologetics, but you know they like you don't have like the truth on your part. It's always fine to just say you know what, I don't think I've done enough research on that topic. um, I I can't really discuss anything more about it. Would you be comfortable in talking about something else? And most of the times, if you're engaging in like a fruitful discussion, the other party uh, is probably going to be like more than willing to go and do that, which is great. Like you always have to just pick good people before wasting your time and energy. God bless you.
I think the important commandment is to kill our ego, not to suppress it. So if you suppress it, then it will come back some other time. So there's someone who does not, or someone who kills his ego is a lot more apt to be aware of the situation, and also understand when someone's appealing to other things to win an argument. So the objective of any promotion of message is to make it. I think it's important for us to personalize it if we can. I think that's very important. If you can personalize it, you tell your story of why you believe submission is important. Submission was something that really clicked with you. Then you resonate with other people rather than say, well, this makes more sense. Yes, it does, but what were you drawn to it? And when we're presenting submission as a package to anyone, I think that's the key winning element to my understanding, is that you present it from your perspective, from your experience, personal life experience, what really made it happen for you, and what really decided you that you stick with submission as going to Quranism or going to other sects, or abandoning religion altogether. What made it possible for us, and we're still here, we're still promoting, we're still talking about it, we're still reading the Quran, and we're still looking at it from that lens. And I think that's something, it's more genuine, I think, rather than saying, this is the best religion because it makes more sense, which is true, but it's not personalized. I think it's better that we go look at it from that perspective. And yes, if we're not informed about something, it is also very appealing when we come from the honesty, say, no, I'm not familiar with Arabic. Because a lot of people, when I had debates, a lot of Sunnis, make the argument, you're basically illiterate in Arabic grammar and whatnot. That's why your thing. And I raised it as, you don't need to know Arabic to the high level or know every understanding of every word and roots of it to understand the Quran, although it helps. But I know some Arabic, but my knowledge is limited. And you can put it out there, that's fine. The knowledge doesn't. My knowledge is not construed or limited, or I'm not illiterate to your understanding because I don't know Arabic to the level that you perhaps claim to know, or that's fine. I don't know the meaning of that word, or I don't know what it represents or whatnot. That's fine. And it comes from the sincerity and honesty. And people not only look at the content, they also look at how we behave, how we carry ourselves. Are we righteous? Do we cut other people off? Or do they cut us off? So it's our behavior that also resonate with the message, because a lot of people look at what we're representing. So this is some of the things that we should, as brother said, as Will said, is now, have to win it. You have to be honest, even when the debate is something, you're not comfortable or you're not familiar or you're not detailed with it, and say, let's talk about something else, or I'm not well versed in this concept, or I haven't read about it, I don't know about it. Let's reconvene. And it really shows that, you come from a sincere perspective. You're here to represent, we are here to represent what we know and we understand, and be as honest as possible.
Peace. Very good points, brothers. These are great reminders and reasonable submitters, even non-submitters. They try to reflect. It's a very important part to kill our egos, and that's where they'll be having that. They might be able to learn more, but unfortunately, some certain individuals goes beyond that. It doesn't end there. Okay, you won the argument, no problem. See, from our side, we want to discuss in best possible manner. We want to set a good example. Actually, it's very important, as you mentioned, because we're setting examples with people around us. But it goes to the point that certain see, before we were saying, okay, the atheists and all, then they were Sunnis attacking us. Then the Quranists were attacking us. Now we are getting attacked by submitters, so-called submitters, to the point of reaching to other communities in other countries, basically with the mission to purify the masjids around the world, to expose the hypocrite and crucify each one of them, and so on. And they think they're gaining credit by doing so. So sometimes you want to maintain the peace, you want to keep it, set the good examples, but unfortunately they don't leave you alone. The Satan's constituents will keep after you to the point of contacting other members or communities in different part of the world. So we are facing so much more challenges in this aspect, and we have to be basically at least spread awareness. When the new people coming, we are introducing them to submitters and so on. And if they come across these incidents or problems, we have to at least explain them and create this awareness to stick to the Quran. Your Imam is the Quran, and if you're not sure about any particular subject, don't worry. Take your time. Don't jump into conclusion without labeling them, without repelling them from the path of God, as we have witnessed in certain communities or servers. How people were repelled by having simply with different understandings or without even fighting us. So it's a lot going on, but at the end of the day, all we can do is just to remind, and of course, God is in full control. The sincere ones will be guided. They see the truth. They will not fall into any of these traps or cults, and so on. May God guide us all.
Yeah, we are, as we are in the community settings, as we are in our own families, we influence others, and we should know that our responsibility is higher. So we should be exemplary people, and I think leading by example is the best way to lead. Talk, we know, is cheap. Action is much harder. And if we're on always advocates going the hard path, it says, freeing the slave, feeding the poor, feeding the time of hardship, whatnot. God elaborates that doing the difficult job is the righteous one, is the better one, and the easy one is, just just say don't do this, do that, or but if we are exemplary by action, we God says we have chosen the right path and we will be the successful ones. But if we are going to engage in certain debates with individuals that we have from the previous server and whatnot, I think at this point we are really not using our time very effectively. And I believe there's no way we can really protect people from being exposed to information or exposed and dragged into different directions. We can always think, just be aware of the situation. But from my personal experience, people have to experience things on their own and they have to come to the conclusion on their own. Until then, part of them, is drawn to that way of submission, let's say that. And that's it, they have to go through their journey. It's like you can remind your child of certain things, but certain things, no matter how many times you say, he or she has to go in life and experience it. And once they get the pinch in life, once they get the realization, it's only then and they come and say, you know what? What you said was correct. I said many times years ago, but it didn't click. But this happened, now it really clicked. And that's that aha moment. Sometimes it's not just by someone listening to you, it's from them experiencing. So yeah, that's my experience, that for me a lot of aha moments had to happen to myself, despite other individuals saying things, or me, if I looked deep down, I had certain concerns, but I had to experience it myself till I realized, so you know what, now I'm convinced. So we can't strip other people of that experience. We have to let them go through it.
Peace. I agree. Actually, 2 years ago, I remember my mom and I had an argument, and she said I was going to hell, and I laughed. And after that, bad things happened to me, and I implored God. This is how I came to here. Praise God.
Yeah, what makes me happy is that, no matter what, who is doing what, and, which part of the world they are, as long as they're sincerely seeking God, God will guide the sincere believers. This is what's the good news, no matter how many noise people are making, or how many Satan's constitutions trying to confuse, God will guide the sincere. Praise God.
Peace. And I think too is that we have these arbitrary metric of like judging certain blessings as necessarily being like more valuable than others. Let's say, for the example, intelligence. Um, and it's like, okay, well, that person's smart, let me defer to them, or that person's this. And what's funny is that you look at these things, it's like there's intelligence is not necessarily like a better metric from one believer to another, because often, really the only things that God's ever asked you to do is this simple practice, right? Like the practice on a daily basis is simple. And if anything, I think part of the problem comes in is that people get bored. And it happens especially when the more intellectual are, you get bored with doing the simple, like, let me reflect on all my actions. How did I do wrong today? How can I do better? Can you just pray today? Can I meditate? Can I reflect? Can I read? Like the actions asked of you are fundamentally so simple. It's just like, okay, now let me go and examine and let me go study something, until the point in which like you start trying to see things that aren't there for the sake of being the one that discovered some new meaning or something like this. And most of the time, it just isn't that deep. It's like there are layers and layers and layers to the Quran, as any anyone here could probably attest to. Like, it just never gets boring to read because of those layers. But one of those ego traps, just following into like, okay, let me see if I can take this to some extreme based on a meaning, looking at it while I overstudy. And I think this is why God cautions, like, some information, when it's revealed to you, if it was revealed to you earlier, it would be harmful for you. So the objective is not necessarily to learn more information all the time, always, or to answer answers to to every single question. It's to continuously do, day in and day out, the boring, simple practice. Um, Otherwise, you could get far astray in 2 seconds. Like, I'm studying this college course on, like, early Jewish Merkaba, which goes into the Book of Enoch and things like this. And I remember reading this, and I'm like, wow, like, if you were studying under this professor who was just very academically just going through, like, just on a very academic level, no, religious bias, and you were to compare this to the Quran, and you didn't have a strong basis in the Quran, you might go and say, oh man, like, you might lose faith in the Quran because there's similarities in the texts. You might say, well, clearly this is copied. And what's funny is that God always gives you the grace of a refutation if you know where it is. You realize why God in the Quran says multiple times they accuse, Muhammad of, like, copying this from other books or things, and so on and so forth. It's just to show the consistency of what God is asked to do. Like, there's nothing necessarily new there. But the reason I bring that example is, if you were not properly grounded in the Quran, and you went to some of these other sources and you went into them, it would be very easy for that new information to, lead you to doubting, whether the Quran is true or not. And it's like, this is going throughout before. So everything always comes back to the simple daily practice that's admittedly boring. And it's like, are you going to be disciplined enough to make it not boring? Peace.
Peace be upon you. I want to add a verse and put it in the chat, God willing. This is 33:70. I seek refuge in God from Satan rejected. All you who believe, reverence God and utter only the correct utterances. Like, I feel it just like God just giving you, like, the correct way to approach these things is to, like, say what is like the truth, and God will give you the truth, and God will give you better arguments, better explanations. You might get uh, some form of guidance, like, on the spot, if you keep obeying God in that sense.
Peace. Just wanted to make another comment to piggyback Francis was saying. Um, I realize, and the reason I think about these things, because my practice is far from perfect. But by God's grace, maintaining salat helps a lot. Thank God for that. So it's I when I read the Bible, I often see, you know, compared to what Christians think about, how you attain salvation. Uh, the Bible is actually pretty clear. It's by obeying God that you do attain the the salvation. Is by obeying God. I think Hosea 6:6 is God doesn't require sacrifice. He wants obedience. Saul and David. Saul disobeying God led him to losing his kingship. Uh, for David, the little shepherd boy who was obedient. In fact, he's described in the Quran as obedient. Uh, because the story about the two brothers is actually where I am uh, in my recitation. So yeah, he is obedient, and this is why Saul lost his kingship, to him. It's really obedience that God is after, and even the Quran says all that they're required to do is to do the contact prayer salat and give the obligatory charity zakat and believe in God and respect His messenger. It's really not difficult for anyone who is righteous, right, to accomplish all these things. It's done difficult for them. Even the Quran says it's not difficult for the reverent who know that they'll see God. It's more difficult when you be distracted like me, etc. But yeah, bottom line is that it's really not a lot that God asks. He doesn't ask us to go to war, although He could. But He could still send a messenger and say, "Oh, war," but that's not what He asks of us. It's very simple. I realize often I even think, well, what is a more elaborate way that I could strive, earn more credit? But in reality, maybe it's a test of patience from God saying, no, what I want you to do is not, you know, big stuff or just, it's just to be righteous and no more, no less. Yeah, thank you.
Peace. I would like to add one more verse. This is uh, this is a verse that uh, like a lot of people like, which is Ayat Kursi. God, there is no other God besides Him, the living, the eternal. Never a moment of unawareness or slumber overtakes Him. To Him belongs everything in the heavens and everything on earth. Who could intercede with Him except in accordance with His will? He knows their past and their future. No one attains any knowledge except as He wills. Now, the point that I'm trying to make is that you again, kind of tying this back to the point of debating or like making a certain argument. You're like, the other party might have like a very clear flaw in their argument, but you just don't see it yet, and you will never get to see it unless God wills it. There might be some argument that's only revealed to you between all of the humans on earth. You will be uh, like the first one to get inspired to say this argument, or like put it in such a way where other people will learn it from you. I think that's beautiful. Is that like God is the truth, and God is the one who gives people like the knowledge that they want to kind of achieve these things, like making like having like a good argument or like a successful debate.
Please, I have a question about the verses we read, if it's okay. 26, 210 to 212 is mentioned subtitle, False Messengers Incapable of Preaching the Worship of God Alone. The devils can never reveal this, they neither would or nor could, for they are prevented from hearing. So here said they cannot advocate worship of God alone. Then we have false messengers, like for example Alban. Yet in most of his videos, he's talking about God alone and so on. What is your understanding about that? To Mujahir or any other who would like to.
I'm sorry.
uh,
I'm sorry, brother. You cut up for me. I don't know if it was just me or could you repeat the question?
Do you hear me now? Hello.
Yes.
So the verses that we read, okay, they chapter 26, verse 210 to 212. Subtitle says that false messengers incapable of preaching worship of God alone. So we have false messengers like Alban, for example, right? And all of his videos, he's talking always about God alone. But for us, it's proven that he's a false messenger. So how do you think that works? What is your understanding?
So, yeah, go ahead, brother Joseph.
Peace.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the question. Okay. So belief in God is not the acknowledgement of God's existence, right? Or even accepting the fact that He is the authority. It's disbelieving in His authority. So that's the delineation, right? Like we see that with Satan, right? He's defined as a disbeliever. However, as a disbeliever, he just questioned God's authority, right? Alban, his message contradicts the message of God, right? He counters or contradicts revelations by Rashad, right? Alternatively, he didn't come down with a proof that's his, right? So this is a question of God's authority, right? God has a system, and him simply going against that authority, that system, in his message, kind of questions his belief in God and his authority. Does that make sense? That's my understanding. God knows best.
Yeah, good points. Go ahead, brother Mujahid.
Yeah, I was about to talk about Alban a little bit. Um, it's kind of obvious, you know. It's like the guys is basically like self-destructing, like the things that he's saying, right? I believe that I watched pretty much all of his videos at this point, and like he can't even make like a coherent narrative about like anything that he says. And it's funny because like, yeah, like a false messenger can never like preach the worship of God alone. Alban is saying something like, if you go into like a mosque, you have to pray 2 rakats, even if there wasn't any prayer at that time, which is, you know, it's a thing that comes from hadith. It's called like tahiyat al-masjid, or like the salutations of like the mosque. And you see this thing like over and over again in all of his videos. It's like there's like a lot of hadith in like the stuff that he says. uh he is like a different messenger, even in that sense, because like he says, you don't even have to believe in me, and you don't have to obey me, which just goes against like everything in the Quran, and like every kind of precedent that we have, and you know, those verses that have like so much emphasis on obeying God and obeying the messenger, and that like whoever like disobeys the messenger has disobeyed God. And Alban would twist that and mean, and like basically say, well, like the messenger here is not really me, it's actually the Quran, because the Quran is a messenger. But yeah, sure, but like you're trying to proliferate something that God has bestowed upon you. If you're a messenger, you'd still have to adhere to the things that Rashad said. Uh, uh, like you'll see this theme kind of occurring where like whenever like a reformer uh, of any sort uh, comes, you'll see these claimants that come after him that have these tiny things that they think that they got wrong, and they might have like certain kind of incentive about like why do they have like a better understanding, and they're like ready to kind of jump on these things and say no, all the things that he said is correct, but he got this wrong, he got this wrong, he got this wrong. And he hopes to basically catch people who have been struggling with these points, and they still haven't received any guidance from God to basically expose them and see, okay, like are you willing to submit, or are you waiting for someone that says, hey, I've actually had the same understanding, the thing that was said by Rashad, for example, is wrong, and I have the correct understanding on this matter. thus you should like follow me. And again, like they would uh, keep you as like a member in their group. That's just gonna take you some. Oh, I'm sorry. Uh, that's just going to take you somewhere else where you're basically stuck with this person that you initially only agreed with on like some of these topics, but again, like he makes just so much like so many claims that for example you can't verify. He makes all these prophecies that are going to happen like 200 years after, like from like this point in time, like nothing that you can't verify. uh Again, it's just like complete abrogation of everything that Rashad is saying. And I think it's funny that some people would choose to go, with choose that path.
Yeah, thank you, brother. So basically, they're just going against the message of the Quran and the God's message of covenant, and that's a clear sign for anyone to red bigots, like basically, to stay away.
A funny thing that I find in this particular situation is this gentleman refers to himself as the clarifying messenger, which is actually taken from the verse that refers to Rashad in 381, where the messenger comes to confirm all previous scriptures. Right? Rashad clarified the religion. He didn't change anything. He didn't go outside of the Quran. In fact, he points out the Quran as the only source of law, right? Whereas we see numerous examples where there are laws now instituted outside of the Quran. That is a question of God's authority, right? Like at that point in time, it reminds me of the verse where God says, "The majority of those who say we believe don't do so without idol worship," right? If we think that anything other than God can benefit or harm us, that is idol worship. And to say that anything outside of the Quran needs to be instituted, there is a clear fallacy or a clear contradiction to God's revelation and to God's authority. I don't know if that makes sense. Peace.
Perfectly makes sense, mashallah.
Yeah,
Uh,
idol worship's like a scary thing because it's very subtle, right? I don't think anybody here has been immune to it creeping into our lives, even as a submitter, even as somebody who recognizes God's truth. We have to be vigilant. As God says, Satan is our most ardent enemy. So idol worship just doesn't come in the forms of some guy just blazingly saying, worship me. But when we put a focus on something and we think that that thing can bring us benefit, that's where we've breached the limits, where we've exceeded the limits of God's authority.
Yeah, you said agree. It's very subtle. Ironically, one of the very best uh, narratives for getting perspective on the danger of idol worship and how it's subtle, like Justin alluded to, actually, for me, came when I was reading the Bhagavad Gita. Not familiar, the Bhagavad Gita is one of the scriptures for Hinduism, which is a lot more monotheistic than people think it's supposed to be, right? And in the Gita, there's a figure called Hare Krishna, which is basically narrative. Like in the story, it's the equivalent of the burning bush talking to Moses, basically. He comes out and says, "I'm God," so on and so forth, and I'm talking with you. And there's a point where in the story, God is saying, whatever you think about in the moment of death is where you will return. So if you think of me, God, the supreme, the creator, you will return to me. But if you think of something else, if you think of another God, if you think of, lowercase g God, if you think of, basically anything else other than you will return to that thing. He says, I will return to you where you want to go. So in your moment of death, when you're thinking of that, I will give you to where you want to go. So if you were thinking of Muhammad, you would go to Muhammad. If you think of Jesus, you go to Jesus. If you're thinking of, the money that you have, well, you go to the money that you have. If you're thinking of your own ego is capable to save you, you go to your own ego, so on and so forth. And he says, so, I'll give you them. I will send you to where you want to go. So therefore, those who think of me frequently are the most beloved to me. And so, I want them to come back to me. And so therefore, you should commemorate me often. So that way you always think of me. And so that way you return to me in your moment of death and things of this nature. And so when you think about this, even though this comes from, like this is, this is just, this is another scripture, this is another, whole other thing. It paints this picture of even in that thing where idol worship is a lot more sinister and a lot more subtle that than you would imagine. So if you're thinking that, think about that for a second. If that was true and you were thinking about an idol that cannot help you or harm you, as the Quran says, and that's what you're thinking about and meditating on as you die, and God says, okay, cool, I'll give you what you want. I'm going to send you to the idol that you can't help you. You have just cast yourself into a scenario where now you're in hell because you cannot, you've gone where you wanted to go, and that wasn't to God.
That premise is very much tied within the Quran, right? Like God is the most gracious and most merciful. Ironically, everybody gets what they want. Like that's the irony, right? Like we got this test because we questioned God's authority, and we wanted to see what would play out if we were able to follow our own opinions, our own presuppositions. So God gave us exactly what we wanted, and now there's chaos and all this stuff that's happening, right? God allows you to get what you want, and as Rashad points out very clearly, right? People choose hell actively. The difficulty is, and it's kind of like that. I don't know if you guys have ever seen like that whole thing where like a genie grants a wish to a person, but it always turns out to be a curse. And the irony is like if money is your god, without the rest of God's creation, what worth is money, right? If you worship somebody, what is the worth of that individual as an authority when all of God's creation is exempt and it's hollowness, it's nothing, it's fire, right? And you are consumed by the absence of what God has provided for you. So God provides whatever you desire, whatever you worship, whatever you focus on, and that is a very scary thing to think about. Is the fact that like if we focus on anything other than God, at that point in time we are worshiping that thing. Because why would we focus on something that has no benefit or harm, right? Nobody focuses on like a termite for their entire life trying to find the ins and outs, and on their deathbed think about termites, because there's no relevance to a person's soul or like themselves, right? But the unfortunate reality is we tend to idolize things that we think can benefit or harm us, and it's a constant story and example that we see in the Quran.
And it's I think when you look at what's interesting is that the more that you look at, so I was just thinking a little for a second about like, Raju's question more about like basically false messengers cannot promote the worship of God alone. And so there are some core commandments you think about. These core commandments, like the number one, the most powerful is the prayer. The second is zakat, right? So if we think about this, so these things, whenever somebody is false, I've just noticed a startling pattern that one of these two things is almost always attacked, and it is always subconsciously or not, like this is always the mechanism where it's being sacrificed. So for example, saying, okay, I'm clarifying, and it's like, okay, now you cannot pray because of these other arbitrary conditions. So it's like, okay, encourage the not praying of something. This is advocating. This is effectively advocating don't worship God at that point, because it's saying, okay, you're commanded to do 5, I want you to do 1. You're commanded to do 5, do this, on and so forth. Now, there's a logical scaffolding, which the logic doesn't even fall off in that question, because I don't want to get into the details of it now, but even when there's sun all day, you can get at least 2 prayers, or even when there's no sun, you can at least get 3, ironically. So number 1, there's an attack on the very sanctity of the prayer itself. In the Sunni form, it's okay, add Muhammad to the Shahada. Let's basically, it's okay, you can't ever just do God alone. In other cases, it's don't do the salat at all. The salat's a meditation, or the salat is a this, or this is that, so on and so forth. The second is zakat. Zakat's a very useful exercise it is a consistent practice in exercising your trust in God's ability to provide for you is a huge component of zakat. So, the 2.5% of your income is a very simple thing to follow, but in practice, as anybody can attest who's, been tested with a reduction in provisions, the less that you have, it becomes harder to give away. But then, the encouragement is to do so, to trust in that you will be provided for, to trust you're going forth, and to also, as a second mechanism, to help spread this is a vehicle in which God does a lot of good by giving to charity. It's a mechanism of absolving your sins. He says so directly. This is so it's a very meaningful practice, and a very important practice. And so the second way in which this is attacked is almost always the charity, the zakat. And so how does Alban say, how does he attack that and say to get you away from the worship of God in that moment? He says, your charities are not valid and you are not a submitter unless the charity goes through the messenger, which means there must always be a messenger, and that charity must go through the messenger in order to actually be effective as zakat. And if not, it's not zakat. So he says, you cannot perform your right unless you are effectively giving me your money, is the bottom line there. And as a mechanism of justifying this, invents a whole new category of zakat that was never talked about ever. And so these are subtle, you see, there Satan always wants to wage all out war against prayer and giving to charity. So in our case, salat and zakat, because these are some of the most powerful devotional tools you have towards your worship of God alone. And if he can get you away from those 2 mechanisms, then he has scored a major victory, because he's taken you away from what God has prescribed as key tools in the worship of God, and of the removal of your own sins for him, and as a way to get closer to him. So when you look at the patterns, false messengers are always going to attack. There's always going to be some vector of attack that has you sacrificing prayer and charity. Also, reading the Quran is a big one. If they can get you to not read, that's an extra bonus. But it's almost always involves those 2 things. And of course, the 3 commandments. They ask for, if they ask for a wage, it's right away. If they don't have a miracles proof, then that's right away. Also, it's simple things, but you find that they are very reliable metrics to test whether or not someone is authentic or not. Peace.
Peace. Is it true that Alban does think he prescribed his followers to give him their zakat?
Yeah, whole
Is
videos on
that
this.
really something he does?
Not only do you have to give him your zakat in order for it to be valid zakat, it must be verifiable. In other words, everybody can. So basically, everybody else can share to see this, in which he's the only viable mechanism. And number 2 is, if you inherit any property from a non-submitter, you must basically give him percentage of that. That's in his videos. It's straight up in his videos. He explains it very thoroughly what he wants from you.
So the
Wow.
funny thing is, yeah, it's he's not even hiding it, and wouldn't that even be idol worship in a sense? Is that you're putting a mediator between you and God, or between you and some form of uh um y- you know like
131.
establishing like a certain practice. Yeah, it's like you can like no longer observe like one of the rites that are prescribed by God, except through like some person or some place or some mechanism. That becomes like a mediator.
100% is. Yeah, 100% is. You're right.
Yeah.
It's the same idea as confession in the Catholic Church. You must confess to the priest in order to have like your confession and repentance to be valid, right? You need the mediator. You have to give me your charity for it to be valid and purified. You have to give me, so on and so forth. Like you're 100% right.
Wait, Francis, doesn't he have like a penalty zakat? Like like the indulgences.
Yes, he does. He absolutely does. Like it's crazy. Like when you read into it, you're like, whoa, this guy is like really advocating for some bad stuff. Like it's not good.
Like the the thing that I really like it is that like he's just really bad at like well he's really good at being like a false messenger, which just kind of like screams like the things that he said. Like we got into like a call with him. He said that he believes that Muhammad was illiterate, and that's kind of like all I really wanted to hear like from that call. I just wanted to extract like as much information for him because like I know the things that he's about to say are just like wrong. And again, like you can just
Yes.
make like an entire list about everything that Alban said that is basically like against the Quran and against Rashad. I don't even really think that Alban like deserved to be mentioned at uh, like 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 a
Yeah.
setting was the
Well,
I
what's
just
funny
have a
about
question
that
though.
is he invited us all. Oh, and so he invited us all to a conversation, right? Or he invited us, and we went to a conversation. Within the first 5 minutes, I remember being astounded because, putting aside that he was, primarily interested in our careers and how much money, all that kind of good stuff. But anyway, so he comes in, he asks, he's like, all right, well, we're committing a, so he invited us. He's like, well, we're committing a sin by gathering on the Sabbath. It was a Saturday, right? And we're like, wait, what? So number one, within 5 minutes, he created a new right that we don't have as submitters. And then he said that we were all sinning for meeting on the Sabbath, but said it's okay, it's a minor sin. So I'm like, okay, you created a sin, you created a right, and then committed us to the sin of it, and you invited us to do that sin to begin with. You're like, what? So it was very quickly like it's a very garbled and very messy theology, and it quickly falls apart. Now, Ruben, you were saying something, sir.
Well, I wasn't gonna say anything, but the only masjid, as far as I know, in France is actually one that is held by believers in him. It's in Paris.
Really? Wow.
Yes. They are actually the one who translated the French version of the Quran. Just wanted to let you know.
Interesting. I mean, I would say it's example. Like, I mean, good works can come from people that are astray too, right? Like, good works aren't exclusive to um, just people who are in a certain belief set.
I think even um, I was trying to ask him for some help that like it's probably like a thing that's gonna help his credibility on like some of this like the claims that he's like he's making, right? So I told him, well, can you, for example, like since you're like a messenger and all of that, can you, for example, help us with like the alif counts, right? So he said, no, I like he just kind of made like he let's just say that like he completely went around that like request, made it about Muhammad being illiterate, and he says, well, like the whole Aleph count has something to do with Muhammad, and that's why it's disputed or like not clear or whatever. But again, yeah, like I would, I'd also advise that like the French translation would be revised by someone who speaks French. I think that's definitely a good thing to do.
Yeah. Well, so it was interesting because at some point, his doctrine unraveled, and he was like, well, you basically, he eventually falls into this thing where it's okay, well, you don't have to obey the messenger. So what's interesting is that this creates an immediate contradiction behind, okay, you're only a submitter if you, because his fundamental question is you're only a submitter if you acknowledge me as messenger and you pay zakat to me, etc., and then you get purified. This is your fundamental criteria for being a submitter. You're not a submitter if you don't do these things. So he says this, but then he turned around and then he says, okay, it's not obligatory for you to obey me, the messenger. And so it creates a contradiction, which it's like, okay, well, okay, you've absolved me of having to obey you and follow you, and I'm still perfectly fine, which means, you don't actually carry the authority that you say that you carry, because if you did, then you would know that, like, okay, this is not an optional, thing.
Everything is optional except him receiving his money. Isn't that strange?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
zakat, no, whatever.
yeah. I mean, it's a cautionary tale. What you find is that you know, it's as simple as the path is, it's hard to consistently stick to it when it's like, okay, you're constantly commanded, get over your ego, get over your arrogance, get over your own hypocrisy, get over, like keep turning back to it. And it's like, it's simple and simple and simple. In fact, sometimes it's so simple that you want to look for ways to shortcut it or explanations for why you fall short. Right. And so what I've noticed is that, when you fall off into anything other than that simplicity, it's usually because you're seeking there's something that they offer that you want, right? And it goes back to the verse in the Quran that says, like, they wish that you could compromise so that they could compromise. So for some people, I'm sure that it's like, okay, well, this is, this element of, oh, look, it's the secret hidden, prophecy, and this people are gonna, this is how this is gonna happen, and so on and so forth. Like there's that element of like, oh, I have access to the secret knowledge, therefore I see what other people don't see, and it brings a subjective thing in there, and it's kind of masking. There's always something that someone's trying to hide from themselves when they're going down routes like that, and it's painful and it's not easy, and it's difficult. We must always be aware in our practice of how we may be doing that to ourselves. Like, how am I? Like, is there something that I'm trying to hide from myself that's creating hypocrisy in my action and my belief? Well, it's like even Jesus went. It's like, oh, look at the plank in your own eye before you take the speck out of your neighbor's. Like all this kind of good stuff, right? It's like, okay, it's like you're just always going back and back and back into it.
Right now, nobody afraid from God. People afraid from devil only.
Anyway, peace, everyone. Love you all. God bless you.
Peace. God bless, brother. Good seeing you around. Hope you taking care of yourself. Oh, he's good.
Peace be upon you, Francis. Thank you. God bless.
Peace. I think it's probably it's probably it for the main event. So that seems like that's kind of reached a conclusion. I don't know if unless anyone wants to pick up the where the verses left off.
Peace, everyone. Peace be upon everyone. Who's here?
Yeah, I am about to start doing yard work now. It starts raining, God willing. I start reading, but
Can I bring up a discussion if it's okay, or I can wait afterwards?
go for it. I think we got some dead time, yeah.
All right. Peace be upon everyone. Mashallah, great study. And God bless you, Brother Francis, as well. My question is this, and I had a discussion with some fellow submitters a few days ago. So God says, my mercy encompasses all things, but I specified to those who give to charity. And then there's another verse, I'm paraphrasing, it says, you cannot attain righteousness until you get from the positions you love. And then zakat is so important. I think that God says you cannot, I'm going to repeat that, you cannot attain righteousness until you give to zakat or charity. Well, I'm not sure exactly which one. My question is this: if one upholds the commandments, right, the 5 primary pillars, gives the zakat all the time, but does not give any charity, is that a requirement, or is that a condition, so that if one doesn't give to charity, that they won't make it necessarily? And my question is the question is that individual pays zakat, observes the commandments, observes the salat, does the month of Ramadan, does the shahada correct, but they just, outside of the zakat, the obligatory charity, they do not pay any, or they're not active in giving out to charity. Is that a violation, or is that a issue where it would be problematic for their soul, or can it be done this way? I don't know if that was a clear question, but I wanted to post that and get some feedback from the family. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, so when you're saying give to charity, do you mean just charitable in general, or to like I don't know, giving to the Red Cross, for example, as a charity.
Yeah, no, I mean, in general, meaning the obligation that God clearly marks and says in the Quran is the zakat, obligatory charity. That we have to give. It's not ours to begin with, or none of it is ours, but that 2.5% this individual, for example, gives. But they're not active, or they never, let's just say never, give to general charity in all around. Is that a problem, or do you guys see it as a problematic in reading or on for that condition?
Yeah, I mean, I would think that in general, like, you know, if they're sticking to their, you know, they're giving their zakat, they're doing their obligation. I mean, they're fulfilling the part of giving that part of the charity, right? And so we should not assume that like it's necessarily that they're doing anything wrong by not volunteering, you know, extra. Now, I would say that you know, God turns around again and again and again and says that you know, the human being is naturally stingy. You know, like left to him, he would hoard everything, right? Like, and constantly God is suggesting like you know, like, hey, the more that you know, using learns like, hey, if you make a loan of righteousness for him, it's good for you, it's better for you, these kinds of things. So I think that somebody who gets deeper and deeper. Go ahead. I'm saying, so you know, it's probably always better for you and natural to, as you like deepen and you move from stage to stage. I think you'll naturally
Have you
want
done
to
any
give
stress before or
without
no?
hesitation.
Yeah, I used to like in juniors, you know,
PC
35
PJ,
now
he's
and
got a hot mic.
from 10 to 20. You
I mean, he had a hot mic. But anyway, saying so when as you you know, move from stage to stage, like I think you naturally just become more charitable and give more. But I wouldn't say necessarily that anything past the obligatory is like meaning that you're going to be like condemned to hell or whatever. But when we talk about the difference in like stratification, like what level of heaven, what level of soul growth, what level of things like this, you know, I think that the further you go, the more that you just naturally want to give more, to volunteer more righteous works.
Yeah, mashallah. Thank you, Brother Francis. I understand the same way. And you know, the verse says you cannot attain righteousness until you give from the position that you love. And you know, you cannot attain righteousness. Now, as I understand it, righteousness is a journey in our lifetime to grow, right? There's no set limit in terms of, oh, you know, I reached this point of righteousness, I'm complete. There is no such thing, right? Every day we're purifying and cleansing ourselves to elevate our level of righteousness. And I see, as you said it, you know, charity, if God allows me and I'm worthy of such, to, in addition to the obligatory charity, to give to do charitable acts, to give to charity, to whatever the means are, then God, you know, has blessed me, inshallah, to further purify myself and to elevate myself in a better, inshallah, position closer to God. Yeah, I see it that way, because there were some discussions that, you know, if you don't give to general charity, you may not make it. And I said, wow, where did you guys get that from? It doesn't say in the Quran. If it says in the Quran, then we actually uphold it and accept it. But if it doesn't say it, you just can't assume if one doesn't give to charity, general charity, they're not going to make it. That's why I brought this up. But thanks for sharing your thoughts. God bless you.
It's a righteousness. The metaphor that came to mind is this. You know, attaining righteousness is like trying to hold water. The more that you try to hold water, the more it just slips through your fingers. The more that you do something to proclaim that you're righteous, to grip onto it, the more you have this way of like undoing it, right? It seems paradoxical. It's like you can't grab water. It just slips through the fingers. But that the more you but you can immerse yourself in water. By immersing yourself in water, you know, then, you know, you can become, like righteous with that. So it's like the essence of what you are doing, like the purpose behind it, like the purity of the intent behind it is really what matters the most, to give freely. And so when you come across a verse that says, give from that which you love in order to attain righteousness, like think of any possession or anything that you love extremely dearly. It's like there is this, I did this with, I had this really fancy aquarium. The 20-gallon aquarium was made out of one piece of glass. It was the most beautiful piece of glass that you've ever seen, like the only one on this whole side of the planet. And I remember I held on to this thing. It's like a $3,000 or something like this, like piece, a 20-gallon aquarium, which is like, you look at it in a certain way, and the light refracts in a certain way, and it's a beautiful piece of craftsmanship, highly unique. And I remember I kept this thing for a good like 10 years, and I kept this thing in a storage unit. I was like, okay, I'm going to keep using it. I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it. Like when, one day I will set it up. One day I will set it up. One day I will set it up. The day kept not coming. And eventually I was faced with, a certain decision, and I was thinking about it. And I had the opportunity, I could give this to a group of people that have a gallery that could actually put some beautiful work in it and showcase it and then get enjoyment and use it, or I could keep it to myself. And so I decided to give it to them, and which, came with great difficulty. I love this thing. I was like, man, I'm not going to be able to replace this thing. Like, I'm not like, this is it. This is the one of a kind here. But when I gave it, it felt like it was the most pleasurable thing that I could possibly enjoy, because I saw the joy in which it brought. And the fact that now, instead of this beautiful thing just basically being in a storage, just never doing anything while I kind of do whatever, it can actually be enjoyed and viewed by, many, many people. And so the more that I tried to hold on to this thing, this item, the more it just didn't do anything. But by letting it go, it's like it allowed that like attaining of that which you can't grasp by trying to hold on to it. So if you can give from that which you truly love, it teaches you and makes you realize that anything at all that you have whatsoever was never yours to begin with. Even the body that you have is just on rental. And so if you can do something that gives joy, and it comes at the small cost of just giving it away to something that you're otherwise possessing, then why not share that joy in what you love? And this is the essence of attaining righteousness. Like I said, you can't hold on to water, but you can immerse yourself in water and thus enjoy the qualities of water.
That was
What is
well
the
said.
meaning of
Sorry, brother. Well said. Thank you, Brother Francis. I appreciate your sharing. Okay, go ahead, brother.
I was asking that what is the real meaning of righteousness in Quran?
I think righteousness is defined in Surah 2, 177, and it has so many things that involve righteousness. Something that is defined to uplift your spirit towards God. It could be giving, prosperity, it could be the contemplate of Salah, anything that is, will take you closer to God is defined as righteousness. Zakat, the contemplate of Salah. Anyway, if we look at 2:177, it is beautifully defined there. And concerning Brother Haslin's, question, this has happened to one of our brothers here, he used to have one beautiful music machine. Then a brother visited us from another state, and when he saw that music set, he fell in love with it. And though he put it as a joke, he told these brothers of ours, hey, he reminded him of this verse. Brother, God says you cannot attain righteousness until you give from what you love. You see, this brother that visits us saw this music set. He fell in love with it. The owner also is the only machine that he had, and he cannot give it out because he too is in love with it. So what happened? They all felt, laughed over it. One thing we have to look at is if this brother gives out this perceive that he loves, he doesn't have another one, And what is God encouraging? Do not be stingy, do not be extravagant. If he releases the only thing he had at that particular point in time to a brother who requested this, he will not be happy because he's losing out something that he was only having just one, not two. But what happened? He told him, yes, brother, I appreciate this verse, but I'm in love with this, but I can't give it because this is the only thing I have. If this brother had two, maybe he would have given him one, but he had only one. What is this teaching us? God is encouraging us, to always give out from what we love. But God is not telling us, give out the only thing you have, and then you'll be left sorry. Because you would think of how you can get another one. If you don't have it, it will disturb you. So that is not righteousness. So righteousness is defined as something that you give and you will be pleased with, not displeased with, between you and your God, because you're not doing it to show off. You have to give from what God has blessed you with so that your soul will be purified. So thank you. This is what I want to add today.
What is the biggest sin in Quran?
Idol worship? Am I correct?
I think so.
I don't know. I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, I mean, idol worship would be that's the only thing that's unforgivable if you maintain a state of idol worship until death. So that would probably be the biggest. That's the one that you're always fighting against.
But the materialistic world made by God. So why he hate idol worshippers?
No, I don't think it's not so much as a hate. It's that by falling into the practice of something that cannot help you or harm you, or giving it that power that it doesn't have, you only bring about destruction to yourself rather than turning to the one thing that can help you, right? So I don't know if I would necessarily label it under like God hates it in this capacity, even though like the strong condemnation, it's more like, well, you could do this, just like you could drink alcohol, right? But it's just not going to be good for you. It's gonna have consequences. That's kind of how I see it.
But how can you measure it? So for example, a person raped 5 women and he never worshipped God. but he just say like, okay, he's a whatever, which religion he believe. There is another person, maybe he's idol worshiper, but he never did anything bad with others. He just busy with the family or maybe in the idol worship. So how can you measure these people? Who is the biggest sinner in this way? And this person believe in the Quran, who raped the 5 women. Then which person is the most bad person in this scale, basically?
I mean, I would say number one is it's not your, it's not our job to judge who's the bigger sinner or who's not. It's, the task is, can we eliminate, idol worship from our practice? Falling into the judgment of others, it gets very hairy very fast, because no matter what, we have an incomplete picture. We just don't have like all the criteria to sit there and say, let's judge equitably. It's surface level from what you're saying, like at a very surface level, it's like, yeah, if someone has knowledge of the Quran, has read the Quran, and then willfully decides that they're going to disobey that, like they have agreed that this is my covenant, and they have now decided to directly disobey by doing the wicked deed, at surface level, the simple answer is like, yeah, well, they're more wicked, right? But I think that your example that you highlights goes to show why, like, we really shouldn't be in the business of deciding who and who is not, going to be in heaven, and just or less good or more good, and more concerned about, can we, as much as humanly possible, the example and the rights that God has laid out, and do the best that we can to deliver the message, and trust that God is the one that does the guiding. Which sounds simple, but it's not easy to do. Human beings are horribly judgmental creatures. Most people want to attain their salvation by being better than the other guy, versus just turning to God and saying, okay, like, how can I be between me and God?
Sometimes it's very complicated when I think in a very deep way to understand something, because sometimes measurement is important. Maybe on a very bigger level, because when I think about good deeds and the bad deeds, so I don't find a reason to hate idolater or send him hell, and maybe the biggest sin in that way. I don't know how it's really worked for God. I really don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong. It's like, these are deep questions. I would say that, God never advocates for hate, right? Never doesn't advocate for anger, these things like this, because these are ultimately end up being tools of the devil, right? Because
But sir, the society we are living right now in 2025, the society we are living right now in 2025, basically a human should not hate other humans. But if you see the comment of the peoples, maybe they are educated also. They directly say, oh yeah, this person is idolater, he's bad. They abuse that person. That's the main thing. People are ignorant. Uh, the atheist people, they respect more than the religious people.
That's true.
That's what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah. Well, I think this is why God gives us the mercy of verse 1585. He didn't create all the world and all the people in it, but for a specific purpose. And so you treat them with benign neglect. Benign neglect means like, you treat them good, but otherwise, like, it's not your job to worry about them. It's not your job to fix the world. It's not your job to save it. It's not your job to, resolve all these things. They're just temporary, and he's going to take them away. And so it doesn't mean to treat them like with it doesn't mean to treat them poorly. He says treat them with benign meaning good. Good neglect is like, take care of the things around you. Take care of the things that you're responsible of. work righteousness, work good deeds, but it's not, you don't have the job of saving the world. And that's actually a life-saving verse, because there's many, many religious practices that demand you to do a lot of very extreme things on the basis of saving the world, or that the righteous will inherit the earth, or the meek, so on and so forth. Like, it's a very interesting verse when you sit there and meditate on it a lot. And what you find is that it frees you from this obligation of worrying about the sins of others, and just worry, and instead keeping the focus on how can I work righteousness and affect the things around me in the best possible way that I can do. And to to trust God to take care of the rest. All right, anyone else got any questions or thoughts that are coming up? This is like, I don't know for most of you all, but it's a 3 p.m. in the afternoon, raking some leaves after the rain. So
It's 1:30 a.m. here.
here in the middle of the night. God bless you for being here. Let's see if we have any comments in the general chat. This is about the time where things start to get a little, start to slow down.
Hmm.
Oh, there's an interesting marriage debate going on in general chat for those who wish to have a headache. God bless you, Ismail, for holding the fort on that one. I don't even want to look at that right now. I got leaves to rake. Oh, and Ismail was deafened, so he didn't even hear that.
I think triple divorce come from Hadith, right? It doesn't come from Quran.
I'm sorry, what comes from the Hadith?
The triple divorce, it come from Hadith, right? It is not the part of Quran.
God lays out a way in which you can divorce in the Quran. It's possible to. God, tries to do everything in his power to encourage you not to do that, but he does allow for divorce, and there's a whole surah dedicated to divorce and its proceedings and how to do it properly, and for example, what to do when if there's a child involved that's being born, not to throw like women out of the home, that kind of a thing. So it's he goes through quite a big length about the ways in which it's permissible.
Basically, the way Sunni Muslims follow, they does not only follow triple talaq. Basically, suppose you divorce your wife, so then your wife has to sleep with other person. That's called I think halala. Then
Wow,
after halala,
that's weird.
she has to marry. If she want, she can divorce. She can marry again to this person. That's how they follow. Like you have to divorce, then halala means you have to sleep with another person. So I don't know it's part of Quran or what, but I know it is the part of Hadith basically.
Yeah, So in the Quran, I believe so if you divorce someone 3 times in a row, I believe it's 3 times in a row, then you're obligated to, you can divorce someone 3 times and remarry them, and without a problem. But if it's the third time, I believe, then you have to marry someone else before you're allowed to remarry again. So it sounds like what they're doing is they're twisting that. They're saying after the first time you have to remarry someone and sleep with someone, and then go like, no, no, no. It's basically like if a couple keeps breaking up and they keep like throwing divorce at each other, God's like, okay, go marry somebody else, go have a relationship with something, like, you know. And then if that only if that doesn't work out, then you can come back and remarry. So it's not like, okay, I divorced you once, let's go sleep with other people real quick and then come back. It's like, no, no, you have to have the intent of like that other relationship working and all that kind of good stuff. Like it's Hadith makes some weird stuff.
In a lot of cases in India, we have seen that the son he give the divorce to his wife. Then for halala, this woman forced to sleep with his father. Halala, she did her halala with father-in-law.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Now that is I'm pretty sure that is I'm pretty sure that's explicitly prohibited in the Quran. I think there's actually a verse. It's such a weird concept for me to think about that you just said, but so I don't like commit it to memory, but I believe, and if someone please, you know the verse offhand, like it, God forbids you from like sleep. I think it's like the fathers can't sleep with the son-in-law or something like that. Why, or like the son's wives or something like this. Like it's like that's so weird.
But that's the common practice in I don't know it's happened in Saudi Arabia or not. I think it should not be. But the countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, they hardly follow this thing. Like the example I have given you, yeah, they very hardly follow that. And even they don't apply blasphemy law like Saudi Arabia. They don't. Like any person can kill you just by saying like maybe you torn off the paper from the wall, right? And something is written in Arabic language. So a person can kill you. Maybe a lot of people. Court will not say anything in Pakistan. We have seen those cases. Last time, a woman only
Okay.
wearing outfit, and the word was written in Arabic, pudding. The meaning of that. 100 people came to kill her. Army saved her. Otherwise, she was dead, like the Sri Lankan guy. You know, that's the main thing. But in Saudi Arabia, blasphemy law does not work like this. Basically, a court has to give order.
Or one that we're talking about, I see crouching up in the jacket. Verse 4:22. Do not marry the women who were previously married to your fathers. Existing marriages are exempted and shall not be broken, for it is a gross. Remarrying the wife that was with the father. It's the father being like, oh look, I'm like I can see the twisted logic. It's super twisted logic and it's super backwards, but like they're probably like, no, 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 this is okay because we're keeping it in the family. And it's the father marrying the son's wife, not the son marrying the father. But then, like, once they divorce, then it's the son marrying the father. So, like, yeah, it's so, ugh. It's a very distorted logic, I think. Like, I could just see someone sitting here arguing, no, 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 it's okay. I'm marrying my son's wife. What? They'd be like, what? Ugh. Like, what? But I'm pretty sure that's prohibited too. I'm pretty sure that's also explicitly prohibited. Like, I'm pretty sure there's a verse that explicitly says like you can't marry your son's something or other. Muhammad had the example of being able to marry his adopted son's abandoned wife, Saeed. but that's a different thing. That's like, adopted, like your son-in-law, something like that. Like I forget. But Signer brings up a good point in the chat, which is that Sunniism is not united. Each region has its own flavor, which seems to be true. Each region, I've heard other, like, I'm not studied in Hadith or anything like this nature, but from the observation that I've had is that yes, that there is like different Hadith corpus that each geography says that, hey, this justifies our traditions more or less. I think there's probably truth to what Acuna, like I would say, I think what Acuna is saying, there's truth to what Acuna is saying. I think what Lily is saying is, we shouldn't stereotype all of them as believing this for the corrupted practices of a few. Not that the practice doesn't happen.
Speaking truth is important, basically. I don't care which
Yeah.
country is this. I don't care about my country also. If something is happening, that's happening. If today, a woman from a foreign country asks to me, can I travel to India? I clearly says, you should bring 5 bodyguards, like 6 feet, and they should have 21-inch biceps. That's the main thing. I will not say to any woman, come travel to India. Okay. Because I know the situation. We have 1.4 billion people.
Yeah, I don't think
Security is
anyone's
not
doubting
enough.
that.
Yeah.
Anyway, peace, everyone. It's been a great spending some of the afternoon here with you. I got to get to do some work. It is 3:18, which is a great verse. Number 3:18. That's the double shahada verse. But peace and God bless y'all. I'm going to. I'm sure other people. Please continue to have a conversation. I just have to attend to some worldly affairs. Peace and God bless everyone.